Hello, hi, I'm Jennifer Stuart, and I'm so happy to be chatting with Lindsey Biel today as part of my Peace and Joy Parenting Summit. So Lindsey is an amazing person who has done so much to help kids and help them with their development. She's an occupational therapist, and she has a private practice in New York where she evaluates and treats children, adolescents, and young adults with sensory processing issues, developmental delays, autism spectrum disorders, and other challenges. That's a long list, Lindsey. She's a co-author of the award-winning Raising a Sensory Smart Child, the Definitive Handbook for Helping Your Child with Sensory Processing Issues, with a foreword by Temple Grandin, with a brand new expanded edition about to hit the bookshelf. So you're going to want to check that out. She's also the author of Sensory Processing Challenges, Effective Clinical Work with Kids and Teens, which is targeted to clinicians. Lindsey is a popular speaker with workshops for parents, teachers, therapists, and others across the country. So be sure to visit her websites. We'll have them, they'll be in the email for you, sensorysmarts.com and sensoryprocessingchallenges.com, where you can download checklists, articles, podcasts, and more. So hi, Lindsey, how are you today?
Hi, I'm great. It's a joy to be here with you.
I am so happy to chat with you. Your list of accomplishments and contributions is very impressive, so excited to have you. And I know one of your biggest areas is sensory processing disorder, or SPD. And I think from my experience as a teacher, there's a lot of parents out there who don't even know what that is. So I was wondering if you can give us a little overview of what is that?
Sensory processing, well, let's start with what sensory processing is.
Sure.
We all first learn about the world through our senses, right? A young child sees things, hears things, learns to move through space, puts things in their mouth, touches things. And so this is all sensory input, and sensory processing is how a person transforms all of those little bits of information into meaningful messages so they know what to do.
Sure.
So that is sensory processing. It's something most of us do seamlessly and automatically. However, because of the way some people's bodies and brains are built, some people experience the world in a different way. So
Sure.
that these messages come in a unique way, not a wrong way, not a lesser way, not an abnormal way. It's just a different way due to differences in how their brains and bodies are wired. So they respond differently to sensory experiences. So that could be like out of proportion responses to things that people who don't have sensory issues may kind of take for granted. Like a noise may be perceived as incredibly loud and uncomfortable, whereas you and I are like, it's not a big deal, right?
Definitely.
So your child may really be uncomfortable with fluorescent lights, and they complain about like seeing it and hearing it. Or they may not complain, but you may see certain behaviors, fight or flight stress behaviors, that you're not quite sure what is driving them. And part of what I do is I connect the dots between these behaviors and any underlying sensory issues.
Good. Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that helps people have a clue about what it is. So obviously we cannot decrease all of these stresses and these things that are going on around us, right, for kids and for adults. But what are some things that parents can do to help reduce some of what is upsetting a sensitive child on a daily basis?
Okay. Before we go into some specific strategies, and I'll give you lots of those, I promise, I want you to have an analogy in your head.
Okay.
And this is going to a picnic with a paper plate. And you go to the picnic and you put a hot dog on your paper plate, and then you get some potato chips and put that on your paper plate. And then you take a scoop of potato salad on your paper plate. And then you say, you know what, I want to have some coleslaw too. And you put it on your paper plate and the whole thing falls apart. Well, that's what it's like for some kids with sensory challenges. It's too much on their paper plate. Parents need to figure out, parents, teachers, and therapists, all of us need to figure out how much can we put on that paper plate without having it fall apart. And also, at the same time, how do we strengthen that paper plate so that the child can handle more and more kinds of input? It's inevitable that out there in the real world, there's going to be a lot of difficult input. And it's not enough for us to say, just buck up and deal with it. This is the real world, kiddo.
Well, you can try that, but it won't work.
Yeah, I mean, you can try it, and we've all done it, but it really doesn't work. So think of your child's nervous system as a paper plate, right? When have you put on too much? That can change from day to day, hour to hour. Some days the potato salad's okay, sometimes it's not. Maybe the child has not slept well or eaten well, or there are other stressors going on. So this is the balancing act that all of us have to do when there's a child, teen, or an adult with sensory issues. Or for yourself. There's probably a lot of people out there who also have their own sensory issues.
Yeah, I do not like fluorescent lights.
Oh, I can't stand them. They give me headaches. I don't like wool. I don't like this. I don't like that. I have intolerances and preferences.
Yeah.
When we're talking about the sensory issue,
right. No,
a little bit more extreme than that. It's a continuum. That. We all know that. So what can you do? There's a lot of things. First of all, I think it's important to get some expert help, right? Because you want to pinpoint what is it that's driving your child's unwanted behavior, what is making them uncomfortable or stressed out, and only once you know what it is can you figure out what to do about it.
When do you think a parent knows they need to get an expert as opposed to it's just, a mild issue? Is it just they just can't deal anymore? Or?
Yeah, it becomes frustrating, right? Frustrated where the child is frequently frustrated. The parent is frequently frustrated. There begins to be a lot of stress in the household. And when parents are stressed out and kids are stressed out, then it's time to get some help. Some basic things that parents can do for their child that they've learned has sensory challenges is to avoid overscheduling. And that almost seems counterintuitive, like, okay, I'm getting an OT and I need to do OT sessions. I need to throw a lot of interventions at my child so my child can feel better. Right. And at the same time, I'm saying, no, you also have to have some downtime here. Yeah. So it's like, parents need to figure out, need to prioritize things. What does the child have to do? And what is not so important? Maybe the child doesn't need to learn 3 languages. Right?
Yeah, well, that's hard in our society, right? The parents are now one-upping each other. My kid does more than your kid.
Right. My kid's going to soccer and ballet and doing karate and learning Japanese, Mandarin, and Cantonese. So, it's like you pick your battles as a parent. You want to pick, what are the most important things for your child to work on? Do you really need to go to the supermarket with your child at the busiest time of day? Can you get home delivery? Can you inconvenience yourself and go at a different time? That may not be, maybe the market is near your child's school, so it makes so much sense to pick your child up and then go to the supermarket, but it's crazy hour over in the supermarket and your child gets overstimulated.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest questions I always get from my parents, the families that I work with is how can I go to the store? My kid, it's horrible every time. They won't get out of the car. Anyway, so definitely.
Right. Well, I'm going to answer that. Yeah. Okay. So one answer is don't do it. And if it's, if it's truly a trauma for a child, don't do it. But I think it's generally not. It's just how to do it in the most, what I call sensory smart way. Yeah. So is the child sound sensitive? super sensitive to noise. Some kids are really sensitive to certain frequencies of sound. Most of us start to hear at 0 to 15 decibels of sound. Some people with hypersensitive hearing can hear at like 0 to negative 15 decibels of sound. So their auditory system is just flooded with noise.
Yeah, that sounds stressful.
It's really stressful. So you take that child into a supermarket, and there are the overhead announcements and you know, often there's piped in music, who knows why, and maybe it makes you buy more, I don't know. There are, you know, the clankety clank of the shopping carts. There's a lot of noise in the supermarket that we filter it right out. We don't hear it. But if you know your child is sound sensitive, you can provide ear protection. You can provide sound reducing earmuffs that fit right over the ear. The oversensitive child will still be able to hear you. It just protects their ears. Now, they're not to wear these all day long because they're sound sensitive. So it's just like live with these things over your ears. Right. But you save it for certain things.
Well, yeah, and I think if you did that all day, then they would never be able to start to overcome
They would never be able to overcome it, yeah. So, you know, what happens is kids have a bad experience in a supermarket, and then they become afraid of the supermarket. If you give them like a superpower, you know, your superpower ear protection, it's like the mighty ear protectors.
I like that.
You know, and you have them go in and they have a positive experience. You make sure it's not a busy time. You let them buy the Malamars they're nudging you to buy, or whatever they really love, and have a positive experience. Eventually, the hope is that you'll be able to carry the earmuffs in your handbag and let your child know, we're going to bring them with us. You may not need it this time. Let's see if your ears have gotten really strong. Right? So they're available if they need it. And because you don't want them walking around all day with, you know, ear protection, although now it's pretty normal. You look around and everyone has something in their ear. So it's not
podcast or something.
Right, exactly. It's not like so special ed looking the way it was once upon a time. Yeah, so, you know, also sunglasses, just continuing, because that is like a really rough situation for sensitive kids, to wear sunglasses. You know, there is fluorescent lighting in most supermarkets, so to have the child wear, you know, optical quality sunglasses, not the cheap ones that distort vision, but the ones that really filter the glare, and the fluorescent lighting can make a big difference. Even a wide-brimmed hat that kind of protects the eyes from that downcast lighting that's so upsetting for a lot of kids can make a huge difference.
Nice. Yeah.
So, you know, these are examples of taking the potato salad off the paper plate, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we want to build the paper plate strength itself. So the child in occupational therapy is going to do something called therapeutic listening. There are a lot of different programs that are available that will increase the child's ability to tolerate a wide range of sound frequencies. So, and that's true for each sensory system. There are different approaches that your therapist will do with your child and teach you to do with your child, because the therapist alone shouldn't be doing it. It's parent carryover is super important.
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely. That's great. Yeah. I know as in our classroom, the thing that's the most obvious very often is the touch sensory processing, because kids don't want to, you know, don't want to have the finger pain or the slime or the mud or whatever. So that one is often the most apparent, I think, in a classroom setting. Yeah.
Yes. And often at home too, right? Trying to put on suntan, sunblock, or any kind of lotion, right? Mm-hmm. Kids are like completely grossed, horrified by it.
Yes. Yeah. No, definitely. And I know firsthand from hearing from the parents that some of the other biggest challenges are anything like a transition or bedtime, which I think is similar to transition anyway. Those are some of the hardest times. So I don't know if you have what are ways that they can help the more sensitive kids with those sorts of parts of the day?
Okay, let's first go back quickly to the whole tactile thing, because I can't let that one go.
That's okay, go for it.
Teachers are struggling with it, and parents are struggling with it, and most of all, the kids are struggling with it. The issues that most sensitive people have are with light touch. If you put your arm out and just sort of tickle the surface of your arm, that triggers light touch receptors, right? And those are those kinds of sensory experiences travel on a very primitive, protective pathway up to the brain. It's like, I suppose it's what helped the cavemen avoid being eaten up by pterodactyls. I'm sure I have the history wrong there, but you get the idea. Tarantula, you feel like a little leg, and you flinch and go into a protection state. So for hypersensitive kids, they tend to be hypersensitive to light touch. So you want to use deep pressure, right? Like a really good deep pressure massage that travels on a totally different neural pathway, and it's very calming and centering and grounding.
Okay, I never understood it that way. I'm glad you just explained that. I knew that deep pressure was good, but I didn't ever understand that light touch was a totally different sensation.
Totally different, totally different. At school, you know, the loving, wonderful teacher who goes by a child and just goes, "Hi, sweetie, how you doing?" And the kid freaks out, you know, totally freaks out. Or they're standing in line next to a classmate, and the classmate just like innocently, you know, their shirt touches the child's arm, and there's a total overreaction, like, "He hit me, you hit me," you know, bam, like that kind of thing. I'm exaggerating, and you've seen what's going on. You know the child didn't get hurt. It's like, "I'll stop being so dramatic. Here's the problem, blah, 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 behavior problem. Meanwhile, there is a neurological underpinning that needs to be addressed. And we do that by giving a lot of deep pressure, by bombarding all the tactile receptors with different kinds of tactile input, often with vibration, or OTs do a brushing. It's colloquially called a brushing program. It's not the real name for it. It's the Will Barger Deep Touch Pressure Protocol, or maybe it has a new name this week, but you know brushing.
I know it as brushing, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just the idea is bombarding the sensory system so that the nervous system's like, "Oh, okay, I know what that is. It's okay." That's the end goal, right? And meanwhile, you're going to take some of the stress off the child's system by, at school, you don't want to use glue? Okay, here's a glue stick. Here's a paintbrush to use with the glue or with the paint. The child is going to get messy and is going to, you can't do this stuff without getting a little messy, but it gives the child a sense of control and a sense of mastery. And when a child has many sensory issues, they feel out of control. They're like at the mercy of a really difficult world. So
no, I definitely see that where they act out. I think because they're so overloaded. It's just they start to just lose it.
So transitions are another huge thing at home and at school, and there are lots of reasons, underlying reasons why a child may not want to switch from one activity to another, especially when they're, a sensory sensitive child. Part of it is when there are a lot of sensory difficulties, focusing on what you're doing can be a problem. So it's like, what's going on? Well, they're like in this vigilant state of like, is anyone going to bother me? Is something bad going to happen? I really feel safe and great when I'm building a parking lot with my magnetiles. And I can spend hours building a parking lot with magnetiles. And it's like, what do you mean I have to go out onto the playground? There's no way. That's like the worst place on the world for me. Although a teacher may know once they're out there, they have a good time.
Right.
but making that transition is so hard. Sometimes it's a temperature thing or a light thing, going from the nice, cool, air-conditioned classroom outside onto that hot playground, or vice versa during the winter. So going from a dimly lit bedroom, because parents may have learned this, my child really does better if the lights are a little bit low, out into the sunshine. It just may be so horrifying for the child. So there's lots of reasons. One of the biggest reasons why kids have difficulty making transitions is unpredictability. They don't know what's going to happen. It feels unsafe. They're not sure that they're going to feel safe. They're stressed out by it. So it definitely helps parents, teachers, therapists to say what's going to happen. Today, we're going to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
First we'll do X, then we'll do Z. Before we do Y, would you like to, and you give the child a choice, so the child feels like, I have some say in my life. Do I want to go to the comic book store, or do I want to go to the playground? I really want to do both. And you kind of negotiate that. And so there's like a flow of what's going to happen during the day. Kind of like what kindergarten teachers do, just helps structure the day so kids are going to know what's going to happen.
And I found it interesting that you said you think that it's often because they're having a hard time focusing, because I feel like oftentimes the children who are more sensitive and more prone to just being bothered by things almost seem like they finally found an activity that they like at free play, and then they don't want to switch.
Exactly. They hyper focus.
Yes.
Yeah. Because they're like, I'm going to tune out the rest of the planet, and it's just me on the sandbox or whatever, the slide.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I see that a lot too.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. So, I guess in general, what kinds of activities, and I guess we talked about that, but resources or products do you think parents might go find if they're feeling like they have a child who is having sensory issues? Do you think their first thing is just to go find a professional then? That seems to be your recommendation.
I do think that's very important. There are a lot of products and programs out on the market that, you could spend thousands of dollars and, start to kind of throw things at kids that may or may not be appropriate. And actually, one of the things that I find, especially with parents of younger children, is they have too many things, in the hope that the child will learn how to play with a toy and enjoy transitioning from one toy to the next. They'll offer like 40 toys.
Oh,
right. It's like if I go into the shoe store for, I need a pair of shoes and there's so many shoes, I can't buy any shoes.
Right. Overwhelming.
Right. It's overwhelming. I don't begin to know where to look. So I think it's very helpful to be guided through this. In my book, I do, my co-author Nancy and I came up with a list of our 50 favorite toys. I think it's important. What I would suggest to parents, aside from the obvious, go get professional help. Not everyone has access to that at a moment's notice. Like, I'm going to go do this next week. That's not always possible. You can go through a checklist, such as the one that I have on the Sensory Smarts website.
Okay.
And fill it, download it, fill it out for your child. It will help parents to tune into which sensory systems really need the most work. And I also provide a lot of what we call sensory diet activities that are really great for like auditory sensitivity or visual sensitivity, or we haven't even talked about vestibular movement issues.
Oh, yes.
Right? Yes. So what do you do if your child is seeking out a lot of movement input because they can't process what's happening in their inner ear, Or what do you do when your child is always crashing and banging and using too much force on things?
Yes, yes, I've definitely seen that in the classroom.
Yeah, so that refers to the proprioceptive system, which is based on receptors in your joints, muscles, and connective tissue. And working together, this vestibular proprioceptive linkage sort of work like a GPS system for your child's body. So if your child doesn't know where he is in space, doesn't know his own strength or her own strength, what are you going to do as a parent? What are the toys that are going to help you to do that? And we talk about that a lot in the book. Basically, you do want crashing and banging, right? You do want bouncing and jumping and running, just at the right time, right? Not when it's time to sit down for circle time at school, and not when it's time for dinner or time for bed, right? So a sensory diet refers to different activities you can do throughout the day so that there's not that, I hate the word, but inappropriate sensory seeking or sensory avoidance. It's kind of like a sensory snacks, if you will.
I like
your child to be hungry throughout the day, right, and have to wait until an OT session or until they get home to get the input that they need so that they feel good. You want to give them a little something all day long so that their body or their nervous system feels comfortable and full.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think that's super important. I think I've noticed as a teacher that a lot of the kids who have issues in that particular sensory area often seem to be the ones who have a really hard time learning and even socially in the classroom. So I've always tried to explain it, because I think that it's good for all children to, for the parents to get their kids out and they get moving and developing in all those areas. Yeah.
Absolutely. So have them sit on an inflatable seat cushion, right? So that they can get some movement. Have them sit on a ball and bounce. Have kids jump on a mini trampoline with a safety bar. Or if you're afraid of that one, or it doesn't make any sense for this particular child, just have them jump on the floor. Have them move. Use something like one of the great activities at gonoodle.com is a wonderful place to find these activities. The Move Your Body Fun Deck cards from Super Duper has lots of fun movement activities for younger kids. There are a lot of things that you can do to get kids to get the yayas out so they feel comfortable. They're ready to be tuned in to whatever's going on. And also the benefit, of course, of exercise is that it stimulates the neurotransmitters that makes people feel good, that make people feel good.
Yeah, no, I like that. Very good. And I think our time is almost up here. I always like to ask if you could give one piece of advice to parents with young kids. What would that be?
Well, I have a couple of 100 pages of advice. But one piece of advice. Remember that your children are always trying their hardest. They are always trying their hardest. Okay. And try to not focus on what they can't do, but what they can do. And remember, there's also what they can't do yet. If you must focus on the deficit model, right? They're going to get there. They are going to get there. There's so many kids who've been all over the place with sensory problems. I'm thinking of one child in particular, and I've written a lot about her. I started working with her when she was 18 months old, adopted from Russia. She was so not tuned in and not comfortable in her body, and she couldn't fall asleep, and she couldn't eat, and she had all these difficulties. She's now in college. She found a lot of what she needed through horseback riding and track and, listening to music and dancing. So she was always trying her hardest. It was just she couldn't do things yet. Sure. And her mom, like so many moms and dads out there, you got to know they're doing their best.
Right. Definitely. Yeah, no, I think little kids are always trying to please. They're just not always sure how to control themselves or exactly how to do it. But that's
Right.
definitely, I think, their desire for
Right.
sure. Well,
Absolutely.
great. Well, it's been so nice chatting with you today, Lindsey. And I want
Well,
to make sure that everybody checks out on the links in the email and goes to sensorysmarts.com or sensoryprocessingchallenges.com to get some more great resources from Lindsey. And be sure to check out when her new edition of her book comes out on Amazon. The Raising a Sensory Smart Child, the Definitive Handbook for Helping Your Child with Sensory Processing Issues. Lindsey says it's going to be out any day now. So
any day, any day. And there's a new chapter on technology and how to use technology wisely with your sensory kids. So there's a whole lot of new information.
fabulous. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. It
My
was a
pleasure.
pleasure. So,
My
all right. See you soon. Thank you.
See you. Bye.